Picture this. It's November 15th, 1777. We're deep into the Revolutionary War, and the stakes are high. The colonies are exhausted, soldiers are fighting for a dream that's still just a dream, and the Continental Congress, well, it's struggling to keep everything together. They're fighting a world superpower without much of a playbook. And let's be real, the whole United Front thing is loosely held together at best. That's when the Articles of Confederation come into play. This isn't just any set of documents, it's America's first real shot at a united government, the first stab at a constitution, and it's about to shape the next few years of the Revolutionary War and beyond. But let's just say the Articles were far from perfect, and their journey from proposal to ratification took more twists than a soap opera. So, buckle up, because this is the story of how America's first constitution almost tore it apart. Let's roll back to early 1777. The Continental Congress is facing two major problems. First, they need to keep the colonies working together as a team. Second, they have to prove to the world that they're not just a bunch of rebels playing government. They're legitimate and they deserve a shot at independence. Without that unity, they're not going to get the French or anyone else on their side. But how do you unite 13 colonies that each see themselves as independent states with their own rules, identities, and interests? It's like trying to herd cats. The Articles of Confederation started as a draft by John Dickinson back in 1776, and it laid out a very loose framework for the new nation. Each state would keep its independence, but they'd work together on issues like defense, foreign policy, and trade. Congress would have some powers, but states would retain most of their authority. To the delegates this sounded, okay, they weren't thrilled about it, but it was something. But as they dug deeper, problems started to crop up. For one thing, how much power should Congress really have? Some delegates argued for more central control, while others wanted to keep power as local as possible. It's the classic big government versus small government debate, one that still echoes in American politics today. One of the biggest sticking points was land. Certain states had massive western land claims. Think Virginia, whose claims stretched all the way to the Mississippi River. Other states like Maryland were feeling shortchanged, boxed in without any land to expand into. They argued that these claims gave larger states unfair power. And then, there was the issue of voting. Under the Articles, each state, no matter how big or small, got one vote in Congress. Rhode Island, with its tiny population, had as much say as Virginia, the largest state. It didn't exactly sit well with the bigger states, but they had to make concessions if they wanted a unified front against Britain. So, after months of arguments, counter-arguments, and some serious wheeling and dealing, the delegates came to a fragile agreement. The Articles would make Congress the supreme authority on things like war, diplomacy, and Native American relations. But when it came to taxes, law enforcement, and general governance, the states would have the final say. Finally, on November 15, 1777, the Articles of Confederation were approved by the Continental Congress. There were cheers, toasts, and a sense of victory. America had taken a huge step toward unity, on paper at least, but there was a catch. The Articles still needed to be ratified by each state, and here's where things got sticky again. Maryland, the holdout, refused to ratify until the land issue was resolved. They argued that Western lands should belong to all states, not just the ones that happened to have old colonial charters claiming them. It wasn't until 1781, after some serious pressure from Congress and assurances from Virginia to eventually cede its Western lands, that Maryland finally agreed to sign. With the Articles now official, the United States finally had a constitution. But it didn't take long for the cracks to show. Here's the deal. The Articles of Confederation gave Congress authority, but no real power to enforce it. Congress could declare war, make treaties, and coin money, but it couldn't tax, raise a standing army, or regulate interstate commerce. Everything depended on the states cooperating voluntarily. Want to fund the Continental Army? Congress could ask the states for money, but it couldn't force them to pay up. Need to negotiate a treaty? Congress could handle the paperwork, but there was no guarantee every state would abide by it. By the end of the Revolutionary War, these issues were painfully clear. The government under the Articles couldn't pay soldiers, couldn't pay its debts, and couldn't enforce laws. The states operated like mini-countries, each with its own laws, currencies, and trade policies. The whole thing was a logistical nightmare. While the Articles of Confederation had its flaws, it was a crucial step in America's journey toward independence. It was a framework that, for all its weaknesses, kept the states united enough to win the war. The Articles also laid the groundwork for what would come next, an intense debate over what kind of government America really needed. After the war, the issues with the Articles couldn't be ignored. Leaders like George Washington, James Madison, and Alexander Hamilton realized that if the young nation was going to survive, it needed a stronger federal government. This realization would lead to the Constitutional Convention in 1787, where the Articles of Confederation would be scrapped in favor of the United States Constitution. But even then, the ghost of the Articles lingered. The fear of a too powerful central government led to the creation of the Bill of Rights, which aimed to protect the rights of states and individuals against federal overreach. In a way, the Articles of Confederation served as both a starting point and a cautionary tale for America's founders. So there you have it, the Articles of Confederation, America's first constitution, and a messy, flawed attempt to unite the colonies in the middle of a war. It was ambitious, it was controversial, and it was doomed to fail in the long run. But without it, the United States might never have made it through the Revolutionary War. It was a stepping stone, and even though it didn't hold up under pressure, it pushed America closer to the country it would become. In the end, the Articles of Confederation were a reminder that democracy is messy, compromise is hard, and building a nation is anything but simple. But it's those very struggles, the fights, the flaws, the debates, that made the United States what it is today. And that, folks, is why the Articles of Confederation, for all its imperfections, deserves a place in the story of America.